I didn't come to the university looking for redemption. I came because I had nowhere else to go. The summer before, I'd been quietly pushed out of a major archival project in Boston, some ancient illuminated manuscript, 14th century, the kind of thing that demands gloves, silence, and absolute precision. One night, I was the last one in the room. One night was all it took. They said I mishandled the folio, that I left it exposed, that I ignored protocol. Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. I still don't know if it was sabotage or just one really bad mistake. But the fallout was the same either way. I lost my spot, my reputation. My name disappeared from conference invites, and the emails stopped coming. The people who used to call me brilliant stopped calling at all. So when a job posting went up for an overnight librarian position at a university halfway across the country, one I'd never heard of, nestled in some wind-bitten region with stone towers and ivy-strangled walls, I applied without thinking twice. They didn't ask many questions, just offered the job. A flat salary, no benefits, housing on campus if I wanted it. I didn't care. I packed a bag, sold the rest, and left before sunrise. No goodbyes. The library sat on the highest hill, like it had grown there from the stone. Older than the country itself, according to the brochure. From the outside, it looked like a cathedral. Arched windows, heavy oak doors, vines that had been climbing for 100 years. Inside, the air was cool and dry, filled with the smell of old parchment and cedar. You don't forget that smell. It settles into your clothes, your lungs, your skin. 2 floors above ground, 3 below. The floors creaked in places, marble in others. The windows were the kind of warped glass that makes the light ripple. Long reading tables lined with green banker lamps. Leather-bound volumes pressed shoulder to shoulder on shelves so tall they needed ladders bolted to the rails. Some of those books hadn't been opened in generations. Some of them, maybe, shouldn't be. They assigned me to the main floor, not the coveted basement stacks, but still beautiful in its own way. My orientation was handled by the head librarian, Margaret, early 60s, maybe older. Gray braid pinned behind her head. She wore linen skirts and blouses that looked handmade, always in earth tones. She moved like someone used to silence, calm, deliberate, always with purpose. She didn't smile much. "You'll find your rhythm," she said that first afternoon. "It's quieter at night. You'll have time to observe how the place breathes." She said it like the building was alive, not in a poetic way, just plainly. Around noon, after a brief tour of the circulation desk and staff room, she paused by one of the catalog cabinets. "We're not done with your orientation yet," she said. "I need to fetch something for you. Just stay here at the desk until I get back." She didn't look like the kind of woman who said things she didn't mean. I should have stayed, but I didn't. It started as a whisper, faint, rhythmic, almost like breath, but threaded with syllables. I looked around, expecting to see someone studying in the back alcoves, but the floor was empty. Just me and the books. The whisper came again, closer now. Not from the front, from behind, from the shelves. Too clear to be a draft, too soft to be an actual conversation. I told myself I was being responsible, that if someone had snuck in I should know. But deep down, I knew the truth. I wanted to be useful again. I wanted to feel needed. So I stood up and followed the sound. My heels clicked softly on the marble as I walked past rows of shelves, each casting long shadows in the afternoon light. The deeper I went, the quieter it got. The whispering pulled me further in. Not louder, just sharper. More focused, like it knew I was listening. Then I saw it. Third shelf from the bottom, a book that didn't look like the others. Smaller, maybe hand-sized, bound in something dark brown with a waxy, uneven texture. It didn't shine like leather, it absorbed the light. The whisper was coming from it. Not a speaker, not a prank. I looked for wires, notes, anything. Nothing. Just the book. I picked it up. The voices got louder the second my fingers touched it. Hundreds, maybe thousands, layered over each other, all speaking in a language I didn't know. Not Latin. Not anything I could even fake a guess at. I held the book to my ear. They were speaking to me. I opened it. The whispering stopped. The pages were thick, gray with age. The ink was deep rust red, like dried blood. The text didn't stay still. Some letters bled into each other, others warped away from focus, as if trying to avoid my eyes. I blinked and looked at the inside cover. Scrawled in graphite, shaky and rushed. "Don't let it see you. Don't read it aloud. Don't write your name. My throat tightened. I repeated the last line without thinking. Don't write your name. Emily. I spun around and dropped the book. Margaret was at the end of the row. She wasn't angry. Her face was pale, tight. Her hands were clenched at her sides. I told you not to wander, she said. I heard whispering, I said. It came from this one. She walked past me and picked the book up carefully, like it might bite. She didn't open it, just turned it upside down and slid it back onto the shelf, spine facing inward, like that would contain it. Then she looked at me. Come with me. We didn't speak as we returned to the front desk. She opened the bottom drawer and took out a sheet of heavy ivory paper. The top was typed in serif letters. She handed it to me. Rules for surviving the library. 1. If a book is already open when you find it, do not read aloud from it. Close it and walk away. 2. If you hear a voice whispering your name and you're alone, reply only with, I'm just passing through. 3. When shelving books after dark, avoid any aisle where the lights have gone out, even if it's just one. 4. If you find a book bound in a material you can't identify, take it directly to the incineration chute in basement level 3. Do not open it. 5. Never use the hidden staircase near the back archives. It doesn't lead where you think it does. These rules are not suggestions, Margaret said softly. They've kept me alive longer than most. I didn't laugh. Not after what I'd heard. Not after that book said my name. She watched me for a few moments, then reached into the same drawer and pulled out a pen. Initial the back of the sheet, she said. So I know you've read them. I signed with just my initials, and I didn't leave the desk again that day. By the time my second shift started, the sunlight was gone. The lamps along the reading tables cast warm pools of yellow, but the corners of the library stayed stubbornly dark. It was quiet, but not the good kind of quiet. Not like the peace of a place that's gone still for the night. This felt like something was holding its breath. The scent of old cedar and paper was sharper after hours, more concentrated. I'd never realized how loud fluorescent lights could be until I was the only one left beneath them. Even the clock above the front desk ticked like it wanted to be noticed. Margaret didn't stay late. She'd greeted me near the end of the day, passed off the keyring without ceremony, and said, "You'll manage tonight. Just stick to what we talked about." She didn't ask if I remembered the rules. I did. They were folded in my back pocket. I checked them 3 times that evening, even though I could have recited them backward by then. A few students lingered until 10, one girl studying for a chemistry final, 2 guys whispering over open laptops. I tried not to watch the aisles too closely. Every flicker of movement made my chest tighten. I stayed behind the desk, answering basic questions and shelving returns only when necessary. I stuck to the lit paths. I didn't go near the back stacks. At 10:45, I locked the front doors. The last student gave me a sleepy wave on his way out. For a few minutes, the quiet settled into something almost normal. Then I heard it again, the whisper. It wasn't immediate, not like the first time. This one came gradually, like fog rolling in from somewhere I couldn't see. Soft, layered, familiar. I stood very still behind the circulation desk. The whisper didn't come from the front or the stairwell. It came from the same part of the library I'd walked into before. The shelves. I swallowed. My eyes drifted to the aisle near the center. A faint breeze moved through it, though there were no vents, no open windows, nothing. I told myself to stay put. But the whisper didn't stop. It wasn't just sound, it was pull, like gravity with intent. I walked toward the center shelves, my shoes soft against the marble this time. I'd changed to flats. The building around me felt unchanged, the same rows, the same archways. But something was off, like the library was listening. As I stepped into the aisle, the overhead light flickered once, then steadied. The book was waiting. Same shelf. This time it was open. I stopped at the end of the row, heart pounding. The pages shifted under their own weight. The text didn't stay still, it rippled, like something alive was breathing beneath the paper. And the ink, still rust red, still thick, twitched along the letters. Not random either, it moved with purpose, loops and curls that shimmered before blurring again. I stayed silent. Rule number 1, if a book is already open when you find it, do not read aloud from it. Close it and walk away. I didn't read, I didn't speak. I walked forward slowly and knelt by the shelf. The air near the book was colder, just enough to notice, like opening a freezer and leaning too close. I reached out and placed my hand flat against the nearest page. The whispering rose like a tide in my head, panicked, urgent, pleading. My vision blurred. I shut the book, hard. The moment it closed, the whisper stopped. I held it for a beat longer. The cover throbbed slightly in my palm, like something exhaling. I turned to put it back on the shelf. The light above me flickered again, then went out. I froze. Darkness swallowed the row behind me. One light, just like the rule said. Rule number 3. When shelving books after dark, avoid any aisle where the lights have gone out, even if it's just one. I didn't wait for another flicker. I backed out of the aisle, gripping the book tight against my chest. I didn't shelve it. Not right then. I took it with me to the front desk and locked it in the bottom drawer. Key turned twice. I didn't know if that would hold it. I didn't care. I just needed to put something between me and it. For the rest of the night, I didn't leave the desk. I sat still, watched the doors, and refused to look back down the center aisle. At one point, the lights flickered across the entire floor. Just once. Then they steadied. When the clock hit 6, I turned the key in the front door and stepped outside without bothering to check if anything was left unfinished. The cold morning air hit me like a slap. I didn't sleep when I got home. I made tea and sat by the window in my apartment on the edge of campus, watching the sun rise through tangled trees. When I finally did drift off, the dreams came. They were strange. I was walking through staircases that twisted in directions that didn't make sense. Turning right kept taking me downward. Doors opened into the same room over and over again. And always, just out of reach, there was someone standing in the dark whispering my name. Not shouting, just waiting, just watching. I woke up with the sound still echoing in my head. The next few nights passed like I was holding my breath. I did what I was told. Stayed behind the desk, kept the rules in my pocket, avoided any shelf that felt wrong. I still felt the whispers sometimes, faint and distant, like an itch I couldn't scratch. But they didn't pull at me the way they had before. Maybe the book was locked too far away. Or maybe it was just waiting. By the 5th night, I thought maybe I could handle this job after all. That illusion broke on the 7th. It was past midnight when I found the second book. The library had emptied out early. A cold snap was moving through campus, and most students had taken their laptops and study guides back to dorms and common rooms. I was alone by 11, the heaters humming like old throats clearing. I'd just finished sorting a small return pile when I noticed something odd near the west wall. One of the carts, meant for reshelving, was half full. But I hadn't brought it there, and the top book didn't belong. The moment I saw it, I felt it. Not recognition exactly, but pressure, like my stomach dropped a few inches without my body moving. It had a different cover than the first one. This one was green, dull, almost mossy, but the same wrong texture. Waxy, uneven, like cured skin pulled tight over wood. I didn't touch it. I stared at it long enough to be sure, then walked back to the front desk, pulled out the rule sheet, and reread Rule 4. If you find a book bound in a material you can't identify, take it directly to the incineration chute in basement level 3. Do not open it. No part of me wanted to go down into the basement, but there wasn't a choice. I grabbed a pair of worn gloves from the supply drawer. Margaret kept them in a tin marked handling only. Then I walked back to the cart, slid the book carefully into a canvas tote bag, and zipped it shut. The whispering started the moment I lifted it. Not loud, not angry. It sounded like curiosity, like it knew I wasn't strong enough to resist forever. The elevator to the basement didn't have a button for level 3. Only Margaret had that key. But I remembered the stairwell near the archives, cold, narrow, tucked behind a locked gate she'd left open once by accident. I didn't tell myself it was a good idea. I just didn't let myself stop walking. The further down I went, the colder it got. The warm air from upstairs didn't reach this deep. My breath came out in short puffs, and the walls started sweating with condensation. The concrete felt too smooth, like it had been polished by something other than hands or machines. Basement level 3 wasn't meant for staff. Not really. The floor was mostly empty, except for rows of rusted filing cabinets and blank, unlabeled shelving units. A few long tables sat under dim ceiling lights, buzzing and flickering like they were dying 1 second at a time. I followed the map Margaret had shown me days before. Barely a glance, but I remembered. Aisle 19, hidden panel, back wall. It was real. I found the hatch behind a tall steel shelf, tucked behind boxes marked with dates and serial numbers too faded to read. The hatch was narrow and metallic, about the size of a book return slot. No markings, no label, but it was warm. I knelt and unzipped the bag. The whispering grew louder. I couldn't understand the words, but I understood the intention. It wanted me to open it. Just a glance, just one page. My hands shook as I reached in. I pulled out the book and held it by the spine. It squirmed. Not literally, but something about the weight shifted in my grip, like it didn't want to go where it was going. I held firm. I slid it into the chute. The moment it passed through, a gust of warm air burst from the slot, followed by a hiss that sounded like steam and something else. A breath. Not mine. It came from behind me. My body stiffened. I didn't turn around. I stood up slowly, eyes on the hatch, and stepped backward 3 full steps. The hiss faded. The warmth receded. Nothing followed me out of the aisle. But the cold came back sharper, like the heat had been a dream I was waking from. I didn't run. Not this time. I walked all the way back to the stairwell, locked the gate behind me, and didn't speak a word until I reached the front desk again. My knees didn't stop shaking until the sun started bleeding through the stained glass windows. That night, I slept hard. I didn't even take my shoes off. I passed out on the couch, wrapped in a blanket I didn't remember grabbing. And still, I dreamed. I dreamed of staircases that turned in on themselves like shells. I dreamed of voices behind locked doors, saying my name like it was an answer to a question I hadn't asked. I saw a woman standing just beyond the reach of the light, barefoot, thin, hair hanging down over her face. She was holding a book. By my 10th night, I'd started walking the library like it was a minefield. I knew which aisles were safe, which ones made my skin crawl, and which ones I didn't go near no matter what. I kept the rule sheet folded in my back pocket, but I didn't need it anymore. It was memorized, etched somewhere deep, right alongside the faces from my past. Margaret never asked questions when I handed her the keys each morning. She didn't check the logs, didn't press for updates. She just looked me over like she was checking for damage. Then she'd nod and walk away. Some part of me wondered if she'd been doing this too long, if she'd started recognizing survivors before they even spoke. The trouble started just after 2 a.m. I was cleaning up near the back when I caught the smell, strong and sudden, like spoiled meat left in the sun. It came from a hallway near the archives, where I'd gone to look for a mop. Someone had spilled something near the fire exit, dark, sticky, and clinging to the marble like old ink. I wanted to believe it was coffee, but it didn't smell like coffee. The utility closet near the back was locked. I checked the small staff map posted on the bulletin board. There was another supply room listed near the West Archive stairwell, one I hadn't used before. I headed that way with a flashlight and gloves, the building unusually quiet. The hallway back there curved gently, just enough to hide what was around each bend. I followed it, the air growing colder and more stale the deeper I went. Then I saw it, a door I didn't recognize. It was metal, unmarked. The frame looked older than the others. No plaque, no keycard slot. Just a round black handle. A draft came from underneath, cold and sharp like winter air sneaking in through a cracked window. I should have turned around. I didn't. I opened it. The hinges creaked like they hadn't moved in years. Inside, a narrow staircase wound downward in tight spirals, too narrow for a cart, too sharp for normal access. The walls were stone, bare, unfinished, damp. My flashlight barely reached the first turn. I didn't move forward. Just stood at the threshold, trying to figure out where this went. It wasn't on the maps. Margaret had never mentioned it. Then a voice called from below. "Emily, it's me. It's Margaret." I dropped the keys. "Can you come help?" Her voice sounded strained, winded, but I had seen Margaret leave hours ago. I'd watched her walk out through the front doors at 8:05. She hadn't returned. I didn't speak. "Emily," the voice called again. "Please, it's urgent." It didn't sound quite right anymore. The cadence was just off, like someone who'd practiced her voice but hadn't nailed the rhythm. "Emily, I'm hurt." My hand let go of the doorknob. My body didn't move. Then the voice changed completely. "Emily, don't you want to know the truth?" My blood went cold. The voice was mine. Not a close match. Mine. I slammed the door shut, turned the bolt, and stumbled backward until my shoulder hit the opposite wall. The silence afterward was total. Whatever it was didn't chase me. It didn't knock or rattle the handle. It didn't need to. It knew I'd heard it. I didn't report it to campus security. What would I say? That someone was pretending to be me in the basement? No. I waited until morning. Margaret arrived right on time. Coat buttoned, braid neat, eyes sharp. She looked at me the same way she always did. I held her gaze longer than usual. "Do you ever use the old staircase behind the West Archive?" I asked carefully. She paused for half a second, then said, "No." I waited. She stepped behind the desk, opened the drawer, and pulled out a pen. Then she added something to the bottom of the rule sheet and handed it to me again. Updated rules for surviving the library. 6. If someone you know calls your name from the dark, and you're not sure where they are, do not answer. Do not follow. They want your voice. They want your skin. She didn't explain further. She didn't need to. I put the sheet back in my pocket and went home before I could hear anything else calling from below. That night, I slept with the lights on. Not because I was afraid of the dark, but because I knew something in it was practicing how to sound like me. By my 12th night, I had stopped pretending anything about this job was normal. I still wore my badge. I still answered questions when students asked where to find archives or historical journals. I still kept a tidy desk. But I didn't shelve books after dark unless the aisle was fully lit. I didn't check noises that came from behind locked doors. And I never, not once, went near the staircase behind the West Archive. The building had rules. I followed them. But I wasn't the only one wandering the library after hours. It was just after closing when I saw him. A boy, maybe 19. Skinny, pale, fidgety. His hoodie sleeves were pushed halfway up, and he kept glancing over his shoulder like someone might be watching. I'd asked him to leave 15 minutes earlier. He'd nodded, but hadn't moved. Now he stood near the visitor's log, just outside the circle of lamplight at the front desk. He was writing something. I stepped around the counter. "Library's closed," I said gently. He didn't answer. He just kept writing. When I got closer, I saw what he was using. Not a pen, a small knife. The blade had a notch in it. His left hand was smeared with blood. He was using it like ink. "Hey," I said sharply, crossing the last few steps. "Stop." He froze, looked up at me with wide, tear-filled eyes. "I just want a second chance," he whispered. There was blood on the logbook, a name half-written, the letters wobbling near the edge of the page. The rest was already soaking into the thick paper, disappearing like ink into cloth. I grabbed the knife and pulled it gently from his hand. "You don't want what it gives," I said. He blinked. "But it could help, right? That's what they said, that if I offered it something real." "No," I said more firmly. "It's not help. It's hunger." He didn't argue. Just stared down at the paper, his shoulders hunched like someone who already regretted every choice they'd made. I handed him a tissue from the desk and walked him to the door. He didn't speak again. Just left with his hands stuffed into his hoodie, head bowed low. I locked the door behind him. When I turned back, the logbook was closed. I hadn't touched it. The blood had already dried. I opened it slowly. The name was still there, only half complete. The letters didn't match any student I knew, but something about them felt wrong, as if the page itself had swallowed the rest, like it didn't need the whole thing. The air around me felt heavier, the floor beneath my shoes slightly colder. I reread the rule sheet. Nothing covered this. Nothing about blood. Nothing about names written willingly. I added my own note in the margin. "Don't write anything in blood. Ever." I didn't know if Margaret would approve, but I didn't care. That night, the lights went out. Not just the overheads. All of them. No buzzing hum, no flickering warning, just silence and darkness. Even the emergency backups failed. Only the exit signs remained, casting dim red glows across the floor like dying embers. I reached under the desk and found the flashlight, but it wouldn't turn on. The batteries were fine. I checked, but the bulb refused to flicker. Something had changed. Then I felt it, that pressure. The whispering returned, louder this time, not behind me, but ahead. It came from the center of the floor. I didn't need to guess where it led. Aisle 13. I followed the sound slowly, my steps quiet against the marble. The red glow didn't reach far, but I could see just enough. Shelves cast long shadows that twitched even when I didn't move. The smell of burned paper floated faintly in the air, and the whispering thickened with every step, like fog pressing into my ears. And there it was, the book, resting on the top shelf like it had always belonged there. Its cover was different again, this time jet black, smooth as glass. No title, no markings. But I knew it, the way you know something you've dreamed about over and over. It wasn't hiding anymore, it was waiting. The pages were open, the ink inside pulsed. Lines writhed across the surface, rearranging themselves as I watched. Words formed and unformed, reaching toward a voice I couldn't hear, but could almost understand. The whispering reached a peak, desperate, urgent, filled with longing. I felt it in my chest, like something trying to claw its way out. I stepped closer, the tips of my fingers brushing the shelf. The words shifted again. They spelled a name. Mine. I didn't read them aloud. I didn't move. I stared at the book and it stared back. Not with eyes, but with knowledge. It knew me. It knew Boston. The manuscript. The scandal. It showed me flickers, my supervisor's voice sharp with disappointment, the sleepless nights, the headlines that never mentioned my name but clearly meant me. Then the whispers softened. Just read, they seemed to say. We can give it all back. I reached for the book and stopped. Not because I wasn't tempted, but because I remembered the look on that student's face. The way the blood had disappeared into the paper, like it had always belonged. I closed the book slowly. The whispering faded to a dull, pained hum. I took it in both hands, turned it upside down, and walked away. I didn't burn it. Not yet. But I knew what had to come next. The building stayed dark for the rest of the night. I sat behind the desk with the book in my lap, wrapped in a wool scarf I found in the Lost and Found. It trembled in my hands, just slightly, like it knew it had lost its hold, and still, somewhere deeper in the building, something laughed. Not loud, not joyful, just patient. I didn't leave the library at sunrise. The power stayed out. The building never flickered back to life. No lights, no hum from the vents, no sign that anything wanted to return to normal. The book didn't move again. It just sat in my lap, upside down, shivering like a living thing. I waited until 7. Margaret didn't come. Neither did the janitor. Neither did anyone. Outside, the sun had risen. I could see the dull glow through the warped windows, casting long strips of daylight onto the shelves. But the light didn't reach deep, not where I was going, because I had decided it was time to burn it. I wrapped the book in a thick flannel blanket and carried it with both hands to the stairwell, not the elevator. I wasn't about to trust anything mechanical in this place again. My footsteps echoed as I descended past level 1 and level 2 into the damp, silent cold of basement level 3. This time, I didn't hesitate. I moved past the storage shelves, past the rusted cabinets, past the forgotten boxes filled with brittle microfilm and rotted folders. The air smelled of dust and dry rot, but also something sharper, like ozone and rust, like something waiting to breathe. I reached aisle 19. The incineration chute was still there, still warm. I didn't feed the book in right away. First, I opened it one last time, not out of curiosity, out of necessity. The pages were worse now. The ink didn't just move, it pulsed. Shapes twisted against the surface, not letters anymore, but suggestions of faces, outlines of limbs, coiled things without names. The voices came back in a rush, hundreds at once, layered and writhing, each one pleading, bargaining, promising. They showed me everything. The manuscript in Boston, whole again. My name, restored, cleared, applauded. The conferences, the libraries, the people who'd stopped calling, reaching out again. And beneath it all, the voice that had learned mine. The mimic. Emily, it whispered. You know what it's like to lose everything. We can give it back. I didn't speak. Instead, I took out a lighter, small, red, the kind they kept in the Lost and Found bin near the front desk, half used but still working. I clicked it once. A flame danced to life. I remembered Margaret's face when she first saw me holding the book. Not anger. Fear. Rule 4. If you find a book bound in a material you can't identify, take it directly to the incineration chute. Do not open it. Too late for that now. But there was one more rule. The one I wrote. The one Margaret accepted. If the book finds you, burn it. But only after you've turned it upside down. I had. So I brought the flame to the edge of the first page. It didn't catch at first. Then, with a dry hiss, the paper blackened. The book screamed. Not in sound, in thought. It filled my head with noise, with images, with pain. Regret twisted into guilt, faces I hadn't seen in years, voices I thought I'd forgotten. My mother, telling me I disappointed her. My mentor in Boston staring at me like she couldn't believe what I'd done. Even Margaret, looking away. The fire crept along the spine. The wind rose, but there was no wind. It came from nowhere, howling through the basement like a cyclone, ripping through boxes, slamming cabinet doors, sending loose paper flying in all directions. The lights above me burst one by one, casting the basement into flickering darkness. I didn't let go, even when the heat burned through the blanket, even when the flames licked up my sleeve, even when my ears filled with a sound like 1,000 books being shredded all at once. The book fought, but I didn't stop. Not until it collapsed in on itself, ash and ember falling through my fingers, scattered across the cold concrete floor. The chute sucked the rest away, a final gust pulling the last of the cursed pages into flame. The wind died, the whispering stopped. The silence that followed felt like exhaling after holding my breath for weeks. It didn't feel like victory, it felt like survival. I stood in that basement a long time, breathing, listening, making sure the silence held. Then I walked back upstairs. The lights didn't return until I reached the front desk. One by one, they blinked on with a low electrical hum, like the building had just woken up. The clock read 9:37 a.m. Margaret was waiting outside the front doors when I unlocked them. She didn't ask. I didn't explain. I just looked at her and said, "It's gone." She studied my face, looked at the burn marks on my sleeve, at the fresh line I had scribbled at the bottom of the rules sheet, now slightly smudged with soot. Then she nodded. "Good," she said. "If the book finds you, burn it. But only after you've turned it upside down." Margaret slipped the page back into the drawer. We didn't talk about it again. But I never went near aisle 13 after that. Because I knew that the book was never really gone.